Okay, I don't want my YouTube channel to become a political blog of any sort because although I am, super political and I love, politics, my YouTube channel is really more for my own amusement. I like to have fun, I like to whatever. So I may not even continue to comment anymore afterwards, or at least I'll try to resist because I really don't want my YouTube channel to become a political blog of any sorts, but I just want to respond to Proletariat Renegade's comments that he left on my page in my response video. There was a response video to his video, which was entitled "The Biggest Obstacle to Democracy in the Middle East." That was the title of it, and he was saying the United States government is actually the biggest obstacle. I disagreed. He had some points that he made, and I'll read them verbatim. Number one, if you look at the number of interventions, their scale, etc., I think it's undeniable that U.S. foreign policy has been the number one obstacle post World War II. Before that, the biggest obstacles were the French and British colonialism. I can. Well, number one, post WW2, of course, because we weren't a world power until after World War II. But I only somewhat agree with that statement, and I don't really want to go too much into it because you have several other points. Number two, you said U.S. foreign policy is remarkably continuous from one administration to another administration. Obama has chosen to escalate in Afghanistan, a war Bush started. He kept Gitmo open. He continues to support the Saudis, etc. Obama's policies are his responsibility. Well, first of all, I totally agree with the bottom part. Obama's policies are his responsibility. But you make certain things that bother me about this, like Obama has chosen to escalate in Afghanistan. Well, yeah, he has, but that's number one. It's not a continuation of the administration that came before him, because number one, when Obama was campaigning, one of the things he kept saying over and over and over again, and I know this because I was at his rallies and I heard him when he was speaking, was that the war in Iraq took our eye off the war in Afghanistan. He has always been for the war in Afghanistan, and that can be, people are kind of split on, people that are paying attention are kind of split on that, but I don't necessarily think that the war in Afghanistan is a bad thing considering what we're facing in Afghanistan. The Taliban, and little girls can't even go to school and learn to read without acid being thrown in their face. I mean, if the United States is going to use their military power to intervene in other countries' business, well, at least this is one where it's due. I don't see how that's deniable. I mean, if we're gonna use our military power to do something, then yeah, stop the Taliban from taking over so little girls can go to fucking school. I don't have a problem with the war in Afghanistan. I did have a problem with the war in Iraq. I most certainly don't with the war in Afghanistan. And so I'll move on to your next point. And as far as Gitmo being open, well, we really don't have any other options. Where is he supposed to put those people? That's the issue with that. The abuse in Gitmo has stopped, and that's the primary thing that was wrong with Gitmo. Not that but those people are dangerous people. It's the majority of them are dangerous people. Regardless of what people the torture definitely is unacceptable. It's un-American, and I think more people should have been punished for the whole Gitmo disaster. But those people are dangerous. A lot of them have killed people and are involved in terrorist activities. But where are they supposed to go? Because states do have rights, and states don't want to take those prisoners. So his hands are kind of tied. It's President Obama. It's not King Obama. He can't just move them where he wants. Number three. Most U.S. oil does not come from the Middle East. The reason the U.S. has so many bases there is to have leverage over the oil supply in Europe, China, Japan, and other powers. That's interesting, but I would like to see your research behind that. I would like to see your evidence behind that. I would suggest that the reason that we have so many bases is so that we can police the world, period. I don't agree with that. I think that these bases should close. I have absolutely, I think it's ridiculous that we have bases in Japan, and I think it's ridiculous we have bases in Germany, and etc. And I don't believe that the United States government should police the world. And I know the argument has been, well, if we don't, look what happens to the world. You know, we had look at WW2. Germans were just going to take over, and let's face it, if it wasn't for the United States, everyone in Egypt would be talking German right now. Most of the world would be, the people that weren't dead would be talking German right now if it wasn't for the United States. And that's just a fact. But I do not believe that, you know, we should police the world unless other countries are willing to pay our military taxes in order to protect them. Other than that, you know, my whole philosophy behind that is, you know, bring all of our troops home, close all of those bases. If the world needs us, hey, we'll come back. But until then, we're wasting American resources that can be used to help our own people, as far as I'm concerned. But as far as the oil situation, having leverage, well, even if that was true, my counter argument to that would be, well, what's wrong with the United States using its power to put leverage over other countries when all other countries would simply do the same if they had the ability to? Name a country that wouldn't do that if they had the ability to. Name one. Name one country that wouldn't do that. So then you can't. So then why should we look at that as necessarily a bad thing? It's, to me, the power that the United States has is not bad that we have that power. It's just, I think that with great power comes great responsibility, and I think our country, the United States, has misused that power a lot. But I don't necessarily think that having leverage over other countries is necessarily a bad thing if it keeps some countries in check, you know, especially considering these, you know, a lot of these countries aren't democratic. They aren't, you know, friendly towards us, and so the United States doesn't have any reason to do that. I do think that the way to make people more friendly is to treat them more fairly, but, you know, but in the past, it's not as if other countries were treating, you know, us fairly. Your point number 4, anti-U.S. sentiment in the world, by and large, comes from the stuff I talked about in your video. The U.S. is not uniquely evil, and you said that in quotes. Before the U.S., it was France and Britain. After the U.S., it will be China. There's a big difference between the U.S. government policy and American inventors. That's mixing a whole bunch of different ideas there. But by acknowledging that the U.S. is not uniquely evil, then the whole thing about, you know, the anti-U.S. sentiment is kind of a moot point, like, because it would be whoever is in charge. So any country that is not the world power is going to criticize the country that is in power. So all of that's kind of a moot point. And, you know, the whole China thing, you know, I laugh at that. China being a world power, because there's so many different reasons why China will not be a world power. Number one, China doesn't have bases all over the world. So if you're talking about an economic power, most certainly they can become an economic power. If you're talking about a military power, yes, they have a huge army, yes, they have technology, but where are their bases? How are they going to get from A to B? They're not, you know. So there's a lot of things that China also has against them. Number one, they have a huge landmass population. They have, you know, poverty, illiteracy. They have a lot of things against them. So I'm not even worried about China, at least not, you know. It's definitely a rising economic power. But, you know, I remember hearing about Japan becoming the next world power, and that never happened. And I know people say, oh, but they have more people. Yeah, they have more people. But like I said before, it's a lot of poor people and a lot of illiterate people, and that makes all the difference. Japan didn't have that problem. And there's a big difference between the U.S. inventors and the U.S. Government policy. Well, there is a big difference. There are differences, but there are also similarities, because when we're talking about American inventors, I'm not talking about American inventors. I'm talking about the American companies that make these inventions common among different populations. And if you're going to argue that corporate agendas are somehow different than U.S. government policy, you're going to lose on that argument, because they are very similar. Because U.S. interests, quite frankly, is in the modern age is kind of corporate interests, and any American that has ever been on the phone trying to fight with a phone company or anyone else would be able to attest to that. Damn, this video is long. Sorry, it's already 10 minutes long. Okay. Your point number 5, Egypt's economy does not depend on investment by the U.S. It gets plenty from Russia and the Gulf states. Their military, however, is a different issue. U.S. money and weapons have been crucial to the military's rule for the past 3 decades, especially considering they didn't fight any wars. Okay, I'm going to stop you right there. Well, that was the end of your point. I'm going to stop you right there, but that doesn't make any sense. And the reason that doesn't make any sense is because when you then say, oh, well, the military is a whole different story. The U.S. money has been crucial for that military's rule. Well, if they are anti-American, then don't you think that the United States would cut off their military funding, in which case you would have to use your gross domestic product to then support your own military, which would decrease the money that you have for everything else in your country. Like, that's just kind of basic economics of how that works. So when you say that, oh, Egypt is getting enough money from Russia and these Gulf states, well, no, you're getting enough based on that quality of life that you currently have. If you want a better quality of life without the United States supporting your military, that's crazy. The numbers don't add up. There's no way that if the United States took away that military money, Egypt would have to use their own money to pay for the military, which means there's even less money. There's going to be less quality of life. So no, I completely disagree with that. I don't even know how you think that would work. That doesn't make any sense in my head whatsoever. If the United States isn't paying for Egypt's military and Egypt has to pay for its own military, that's less money in the pot for Egyptian people. And that's just a fact. So if Egypt becomes a democracy and wants to become part of the world stage and improve their quality of life, they are going to have to play nice with the United States. And if you think that's not true, then you can continue to believe that, but I'm telling you it's not true. And you can't name a power, you can't name any country that is living in kind of a good quality of life that isn't playing by America's rules and isn't doing business with America. That's just absurd because it's not true. And Egypt will have to do that, especially if they're going to be kind of more on the anti-American side and not take money for their military. Like Egypt is going to need the United States for money. That's absurd to think that that's not going to be the case, because it is. Number 6. I'm considering a video on the Brotherhood, but you are 100% right that it is up to the Egyptian people to what form the government they want, Islamic or not. I hope you feel better soon. Yeah, I do feel a little better. But about the whole Brotherhood thing, I am not anti-Islam. I'm not anti any religion, by and large, as long as it's not hurting people or cults and stuff like that. I'm kind of against. But any mainstream religion I'm not necessarily against. But the one thing I do want to say about the Brotherhood, with that being prefaced that I'm not against Islam, I'm not Islamic myself, I don't believe it, but I'm not against anyone's. Part of democracy is tolerance for other cultures and stuff. But the thing that bothers me about this organization is that anytime historically you have a religious organization that is using politics, of course, the history behind it is they always pretend to be pro-democracy when they are not in power, but once they seize power, they dismantle the democracy. So the United States does, and people like me do have a right to be concerned that the Brotherhood, if they do are voted into power, which it is the Egyptian people's right to do so, but if they do, it would not be surprising to me or anyone else paying attention that once they're in charge, then they start dismantling the democracy that put them in power, so that they can maintain in power. And I went to their actual, I went to Wikipedia and then read their agenda, what their organization was all about, and then went to a couple of Islamic sites. It is. They want, Islam, their whole slogan is Islam is the answer. So I don't have a problem with that. The problem that I have is when you say Islam is the answer, whose version of the religion are you talking about? It always tends to be these more conservative people that kind of believe that, which, what'll end up happening is, they'll start off moderate and sane at first, and then the more power that they give and start dismantling, dismantling democracy, then here comes the turbans for women, and not by choice. If women want to wear that by choice, that's no problem, but it'll be forced. It'll be People will be forced to do things that they don't want to, and there goes your democracy. And then people will be screaming for the United States or someone else to come and save them once again. Not everyone, the people in power, of course, will love it, but the citizens, they'll be like, this isn't the democracy that I was fighting for. This is the democracy that we just got rid of one dictator only to have another group of dictators come in, and that's what we're trying to avoid. But that's all I'm going to say about that. This is fucking 14 minutes and I didn't want to talk about politics, but I just had to, and so now I need to do something funny because that's what I want my site to be about. But that's all I have to say about that. Okay, bye.